Since launch, Arc Raiders has offered a handful of unique perspectives to take your game experience. Go to war with other raiders and have that thirst for loot that seemingly can never be quenched, fight the Arc and try and win one battle at a time for humanity, become the most infamous loot hoarder in all of Speranza, showcasing your best inventory possible, and any number of things you could think of. But one additional standout and common way to play is to grind trials, an optional ranked ladder of sorts, though, as we'll talk about in this video, while ranked, it's quite a bit of a ways from being a competitive ladder, despite being a ranked system in-game. As someone who's grinded out the trials for quite a bit of time now, I wanted to take a few minutes to talk big picture, the flaws with the existing system, and how it can be expanded upon in the future. Drop your thoughts and input down below as we go along, drop a like if you guys enjoy the video, and make sure to subscribe for more Arc Raiders content. I'd love to have you in the community. Finally, check out my friends over at Advanced GG. We just launched a few collaborative items in a flavor where code espresso can get you 10% off your entire order. But anyways, let's get into it. So first, a quick little housekeeping note here. Yes, trials are optional. I feel like there's bound to be some mention of, well, just don't play them then, or just complaining to complain types of things. And frankly, this video isn't made with any malice. If I don't do trials next season, that's fine with me too. But as someone who's enjoyed the concept of it and just would like to see it iterated upon a little better, I just want to start the conversation here. My opinion is just another opinion in a sea of opinions online, so if you don't agree, that's 100% entirely fine. We'll get back to the usual content talking about information-based stuff here in the next video, but for now, I'm going to yap a little bit. So firstly, let's talk about the fundamental flaws with Arc Raiders trial systems. These are in no particular order, but some things that I've picked up on over the last couple of months of doing trials. One big thing that I've noticed recently, especially, and we can talk about it because we just actually had this pop up in one of our videos last week, was you kind of get rewarded in some instances for not playing. A huge question I got the other day in our Shrouded Sky update video was, how in the world did you place, I think it was like 11th in the B-roll clip this week with 50 or 60,000 score, and I'm fighting for my life way higher than that at a lower rank? That kind of question is incredibly valid and reasonable. But here's why that happened. Leading up to that final week here, I had a ton of stuff happening in real life that I didn't get the chance to play the game that much that week. So that footage that I recorded where it showed that with like 60,000 score, I was 11th on my leaderboard in Hotshot. That footage was recorded, I want to say, on the Saturday before the update. So what had happened was that my game was dormant from that Monday or Tuesday weekly refresh to Saturday evening. Nearly the entire week had lapsed until I was even placed. So the grinders, the ones who are doing this as their main thing, trying to go for Cantina Legend, all that kind of stuff, the ones who care heavily about it, they were all on day one, right? That's a whole week of competition then that you have to try and one-up the next guy on your ladder, which is what I had to do most of the season. But this week in particular that was mentioned, I didn't get placed until Saturday. So I'm not getting placed into these active brackets where people are already hundreds of thousands of score in their leaderboards. Instead, I was placed in a basically fresh ladder. The leaderboard that I had, I'm not even kidding you, had like 11 or 12 people in it. Then it later populated to the full thing, but like that first day there, because it was something that it was still populating with people playing their first matches of the week, it was much lower. So fundamentally speaking, it's flawed to the point that you're almost rewarded for not playing the game and placing later in the week. Now, ultimately, it did equate out to what I think was about like 80 to 90,000 was the cutoff spot from deranking. But number one, that's still insanely lower than most weeks of playing that I've had to do, or that perhaps that you've had to do. 100,000 plus was my cutoff in Hotshot for a couple of weeks leading up to that point, and that was like, that felt low. But number two, that's not always the case in those lower ranks there. So like you can kind of game the system if you're in a lower rank than Hotshot to get that double or triple promotion if you just don't play for a couple of days. So like fundamentally that needs some work. Solos are also at a severe disadvantage because when you end up having the duos or trios, that score is cumulative. What you get for your trials ranks in that match is going to apply for everybody that's associated with that party. It's not an individual basis thing, which may be a way to fix that. We'll touch on that in a second. But if you're playing solo, you don't have a standard squad that you grind out with or that you can end up trying to grind out any given week with, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage just because you simply don't have as much ground to cover with multiple players versus just one. Another thing that's fundamentally flawed is the RNG of it all. Time of day for some, whether or not you can hit that 2x map condition in the window you have, or more notably, things like Hidden Bunker. Previously, that was only around twice a day, both at awful times for most normal people in North America. Either it was like right in the middle of like your dinner rush or if you had evening plans, or in the middle of your workday in the morning. Yes, it's since been adjusted, but just as a reference point. But beyond that, specific challenges can be completely RNG. One thing that I think of most recently was like the ticks. Destroying destroying those had me and my squad going crazy for about a day or so. Prime example, ticks spawn in some areas more than others. On Stella, for example, you can find a ton of tick spawns in the Seed Vault and in the level above that in the Archives. But here's the thing, you can also not find a lot of tick spawns there. It's entirely random. Sometimes you'll find a dozen tick spawns in those locations, and then one, the most perplexing my squad found, I'm not even exaggerating, we had a fresh Seed Vault spawn like right next to it. There was not a single tick in that Seed Vault. So like that felt wild. Granted, you can perhaps force a respawn, you can run a route, just run a circular back and forth type thing if you find an area that you find decent tick spawns. That's how people farm them, but to have 0 tick spawns or lessen tick spawns in one match versus another, you're already throwing a wrench in your raid going for those explicitly if you get the bad luck there. Another thing, players can spawn late. If you're going explicitly for trials, spawning in 5, 10, or upwards of those 13 minutes late is just detrimental. Like, that's the biggest buzzkill here at that point, where you get yourself all ready, and yeah, sure, you can just exfil and kind of requeue, but you waste 5 to 10 minutes of time trying to just reset back up at that point. That's one thing that becomes a little bit challenging when we talk about potential fixes, but other than that, there's the monotony of doing too many of the same challenges over and over again. There are too many repeats on rotation, too close together, some back-to-back weeks even, you'll see. I wouldn't mind doing some challenges if I didn't also encounter them again, sometimes back-to-back, sometimes 2 weeks later. I will give a little credit though where it's due. The next season trials have already been found by some, and apparently there's a couple of brand new trials. The one that I find just hilarious is there's one that sees how many times you can get struck by lightning. So like that's a pretty funny one. There's also unfortunately exploitable challenges though. Talking about challenges, the major duplication bug that happened recently, if you really wanted, you could have duped like snitch scanners, and then in preparation for the destroying wasps, or during that happening, I forget when that happened with the trial overlap, you could just go absolutely nuts throwing those down for an entire match, and that would just exponentially increase your score for the destroying wasp challenge, well above anyone who may engage with a standard match, even if it's those prolonged 40-minute matches of locked gate or hidden bunker. That may be a smaller critique because it happens, but it's also something that doesn't happen all the time because, again, we don't see too many of those duplication glitches like this. And then finally, the last thing, lesser considered, but when you think about it, there are exploitable ranks to a degree. When you're in the higher tier ranks, it's harder and harder to maintain your rank, right? Well, you could technically chill out for a week or two, get deranked intentionally, and then grind it out a bit more in a chill leaderboard at a lower level, and then hit that double or triple promotion in a much easier fashion. I'd seen some conversations on Reddit of some people intentionally dropping down to Daredevil 2 or Daredevil 1 to hit that double or triple promotion instead of fighting for their lives in the top 10 slots or whatever in that final Daredevil 3 window before entering into Hotshot. Why? Because most scores at that point would be lower than trying to go for that single promotion in Daredevil 3. So like, there's definitely some stuff that does need to be fixed there. But okay, all things considered, that's a lot of stuff to yap about, but let's get past all of that. Let's say, okay, I can deal with that kind of stuff. The other thing is that for a lot of people, the seasonal rewards don't really even seem to be worth it to grind that much for what you end up getting back. Actually, 3-starring stuff, like that in particular, that's not bad. That's actually pretty nice because there are a ton of blueprints in that pool that you can end up getting from trials that you can end up getting every single week. The option of upwards of what, like 15 rewards that could be a blueprint, but overall seasonal rewards, those things that you'd think are the incentive to keep grinding the entire season, they historically have not been great. Now here's the thing, the upcoming season rewards do look better, assuming nothing has changed. Full transparency, I'm away from my desk for the next few days and have been since right after the update, taking some time away, that this video is pre-recorded. It's quite possible something happens that this information isn't necessarily entirely accurate. I have the worst luck when it comes to making stuff in advance, that something comes out to render the previous information useless, just like the absolute worst luck with that. So maybe something changes in the meantime. As of recording this, we don't have the upcoming next week of trials to really work with. My own personal client hasn't updated to see any previews of those types of things. But anyways, what was seen as rewards when recording this, they do look a little better. However, that's also still not necessarily the best indicator. Better, not great, awesome, must have, just better. So ultimately, it's still entirely subjective if you think it's worthwhile to go for it for the entire season. If things aren't overhauled and changed, is it really worth the hassle to grind out to any given rank you may want for the skins that are associated with that and the additional rewards you may see? That's entirely up to you and not a decision that I can say yes or no for on your behalf. It's completely subjective. But okay, how do you overhaul this kind of stuff? All of this is personally speaking. If you have something to add, feel free to. Maybe somebody at Embark sees this and we get something going out of it, but Who knows? Firstly, I think talking with that last point, you do need better rewards. Again, season 3 here, if we're calling it that, does seem to have a better positive reception, but again, is it something enough that keeps you grinding from week 1 all the way until the end when that season ends? Offer up some cooler looking skins, a little more in depth, perhaps different variations of different rewards. I've seen some suggestions about like checkpointed rewards where, like, similar to how some ranked ladders do, if you hit a certain rank within a season, you end up getting a checkpointed thing. Like, let's say I hit Daredevil 2 or something like that, but then drop down to Daredevil 1. Do you get granted the highest rank you end up getting, or do you end up, again, having it be where you finish? That's one of those things that you could maybe tweak and try out for a season to see the reception to that kind of stuff. Challenge types, I think, need to be adjusted a little bit. Again, there's too much of the crossover of what we see before. Some of the challenge formatting is also strange in regards to if you want it to be something that people can either grind out or something. There are challenges that do have genuine caps to them, something you can't exceed X amount of score per single given challenge. So do you add more in to bypass that to allow for more competitive sort of variance and a higher score ceiling organically? I also think that we should be separating solos, duos, and trios. I don't know if this is just like an off the top of my head idea and it in practice would work terribly, but I think that you should be able to have different ladders, solos, duos, and trios, and if you end up playing for one or the other, maybe you have a crossover and you do 2, you take the best of those 3 as your overall rank and where you finish up. Like, that's what you get rewarded with. You could also change it so it's individual use cases in groups to make the competition of scoring a little more healthy. Because again, those that do play solo that don't have a regular squad, there's no way they're gonna end up coming anywhere near a squad of 3 that is consistently grinding out, going for trials. And yes, that's, again, maybe perhaps one of those things that you can say, well, that's trials for you. I just think that that's one of those things that could be iterated on a little better. I don't know how this would work. Like, figuring out a scenario for this would be insanely hard to accurately measure this, but I think a leaderboard sorting of sorts would be pretty cool. One thing that we talked about again earlier in the video, talking about how like you're almost rewarded for not playing, I mentioned that even if you end up grinding out the game in those last couple of days, you're not dropped into already active leaderboards. You end up being placed in newer leaderboards that oftentimes won't have as many people that are grinding out as hard as those that are there from day 1. So if you can end up sort of having like an algorithm basic, like almost an ELO or MMR system for leaderboards in particular, that figures out, okay, this is kind of like where your strength is in this season of trials. We're going to drop you into this existing ladder already, though fundamentally it might have to adjust the underlying scoring situation as is, because we see the ladders broken up into 100-player ladders. This would kind of either have to expand that and make like each rank a checkpointed amount of score you have to reach, that it's you versus every single person out there, or to scale it back again into these individual 100-player brackets. It might be a little bit of a tougher undertaking. But either way, the concept, it kind of alleviates some of that late start exploiting, if you can call it that. I think that'd be something that maybe could work. I don't know. Again, a lot of this off the top of my dome, I think could work, but in practice, it could backfire tremendously. I also think there should be some late spawn scaling, and I don't know, again, how you'd adequately do this. You kind of have to like use the average of the timing that you're in the match and what you've scored, like a score per minute value almost, to end up scaling upwards. But this would be something that would allow players that are going explicitly for trials to be able to take advantage of those spawns where they're 3, 5, 10, 13 minutes late into a spawn, so that they don't lose out on all that time. If you end up grinding it out like in a condensed fashion here, that'd be pretty cool that you could see that scale up to something that accounts for the full time, the full 30 minutes, even if you played 25 minutes or something like that. Again, whether or not that introduces perhaps more problems than not, who knows, but in combating that particular instance of the problem of spawning late going for trials, might be something you could consider. The one thing I saw as a suggestion that I'm kind of on the fence on personally, but like, I don't know if I'd like it or dislike it, but I'd like to see it tried for like a week maybe to test out, is I've seen a couple of people say remove the 2x modifiers on major map conditions. That way you can progress equally across any map and mode type, because as someone who did grind out the season, I don't think that's so much a ranked ladder as time in ladder from if Joe Schmo, who has 0 chance of catching a certain 2x modifier for a trial, if he's up against somebody that did. Like electromagnetic storm, for those unaware, best place to do the opening probes because there's more spawns of them and it's the 2x map modifier. Electromagnetic storm does not happen nearly as often as a lot of the other map conditions. So if you end up having that unlucky draw where you just cannot make that work for X amount of time over a course of a couple of days, you're just out of luck. So if you were to remove, in theory, that 2x modifier, yeah, you'd still end up running into the situation where there are more spawns in electromagnetic storm, but you could also get lucky in those regular matches that maybe you do find a lot of these different probes and you find an untouched lobby where nobody else is going for these, and you could end up being a little competitive in that sense. Ultimately, there are a lot of things that you could definitely go back and forth on. I don't think there's going to be any perfect way to end up absolutely nailing down trials, but I do think that the base since launch has been a solid way to give us something outside of just looting, outside of just raiding and fighting other ARC or other raiders out there, that it gives you another objective to go for, offering a variable of the gameplay experience if you want to go for it or not. And I think that that's something that's really cool and has a nice base, but I just think it could be done a little better. So just want to share some thoughts with you here today. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think here of this? Do you think I'm just full of garbage? Do you think some good ideas in here? Let me know. If you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, drop a like on it. And of course, if you aren't new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things ARC Raiders and even more FPS content. I'd love to have you in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Honest Man Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.